Se você pudesse escolher alguém para tomar um café, qualquer pessoa do planeta, que pessoa seria?
Eu gostaria de trocar uma ideia com o Papa.
O que você acha da nova vocalista do Linkin Park?
Achei muito boa.
How much money you make in a year?
Você quer saber quanto que eu faço?
Senhoras e senhores,
Não,
vocês viram
a
que-
gente vai...
Looks like we made it. Look how far we've come, my baby.
Business is of course so important, so for all of us. But I think who you are, what you are doing in life, it really matters a lot. And our relationships, you know.
Tem que pôr fone?
Pra você escutar a gente bem pertinho.
Bem de pertinho. Ó, que delícia esse som.
Prazer estar aqui com vocês, assim, muito legal mesmo, assim, super
Não, e
bacana.
a gente também tá aqui
junto.
graças a você, né?
$1,5 milhão.
Gostoso isso,
Que
hein,
ano que
cara?
foi?
Fiz pergunta rápida. O que te traz aqui esse ano? Bryan Briscoe Paul Reiman. Welcome to the Quinto Dia Útil podcast.
Thank you.
And for Bryan, welcome back.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Because you already been here
Yeah,
Last
for
year.
last year.
Yeah.
we had a great time last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, that conversation, and wow. But we are going to do something different today because we are going to do the session today, or you did it yesterday?
We did our session
We did a
yesterday.
session yesterday,
Yeah.
yep.
What about this the subject?
We were talking about how to actually manage your comp team. So if you're a leader of a compensation team, what do you need to do? What do you need to think about? How do you need to handle that differently? Since he's like a real person, like he's not just a consultant. I was a real person before I became a consultant, so we wanted to share some of those actual stories that we've learned along the way.
Yeah, you had an experience with this, and Bryan,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had the same.
So I think between us, we've probably done led or done comp at 8 different companies, not counting the consulting stints and all the clients and all those types of things that we've both done on all those sides. So I think Paul and I have spoken together a lot over the years, and one of the things that we always try to do is bring something realistic to people, or Paul's in a fun situation now because he has a team and they can collect data and go do research, and so part of it is bringing his research forward, and then also putting some stories around what does it really mean, we're talking to people, I think in the audience and also in the data, we saw, most people have a team of 3 or less people. So I think one of the biggest challenges as a compensation person, when I think about as a practitioner starting out, is if there's only 2, maybe, and, sometimes there's only 1, maybe you're the only one. If there's only, but in most cases, if there's only 2 other people that do what you do, and depending on, what their experience and their skill is, it's hard to get that perspective of what should I do?
Yeah, I will ask these the top challenges, but let me connect with this one. The first, you think AI, you guys, you think AI could do this part of this job? Because I remember, if you think of the first revolution, technological revolution, 90s decade, when you have an Excel and spreadsheet, and in Brazil, I remember because I was there, but someone told me Emerson, we had teams with 30 people, 20, 30. So, but with this revolution, you have a computer to do, you don't need anymore many people to do a survey or something. But now we have something bigger is correct? Is it bigger and more effective? If the word is, I don't know if it's correct. But you think AI could bring something good and new, for teams 1 or 2 people?
Yeah, I think AI is going to make the most impact for a team of 1 or 2, since if you're the one comp person, you are doing the benchmarking, crunching the numbers, and having to explain it to everybody and answer questions. 5 years from now, there's no reason AI is not going to do the first 2, right? Why can't it match the jobs and crunch the numbers for you? So now I have the time I'll use the buzzword, the strategic work that everybody wishes they could do, right? I can actually spend more time partnering with my business, listening to what's going on, rather than spending it behind the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So I do think it's going to make a huge impact, particularly for small teams, because they're the ones wearing multiple hats, trying to figure out how do I juggle both of these parts of my responsibilities.
Yeah, could you bring me something when you talk about AI, we have the Chat GPT that is my phone. We have connection, but AI is not like this. AI is something bigger. Like we are using AI, for example, to cut our videos and put on Instagram. Like we are not using a chat. We are using a program that is based on AI. So, are you guys using different tools or like that you can recommend for here people all over the world? I don't know.
Well, and I think, to your point, like AI isn't just ChatGPT, right? Like, when Netflix was telling me that I should watch The Big Bang Theory 15 years ago, it's because it saw me watch something else and it figured I would like that.
Like that voice. No, this is not Big Bang Theory. This is 2.5 Men.
There you go.
Also Chuck Lorre.
But this guy,
maybe that's what I was
producer.
watching,
Yeah,
right? And it knew that I should
And
watch
he
it,
knew.
right?
Person could have been the AI.
He is the
He was
AI
like-
behind Netflix, but it was an algorithm that said, you like this, I'll have you watch this, and that's the same thing at the end of the day, right? It's using the data to make a recommendation. That's what ChatGPT is doing, just at a massive scale. So, like, the AI is there, and it's been there for a while. I don't think there's a tool. There isn't like a comp tech tool that is like the perfect AI thing, but there's AI in all of the comp platforms that are out there now, right? If there's been a lot of announcements even here this week of like the new AI things where it's using AI, not generative chat AI, but algorithms to help you do your job faster and easier. So all the tools surrounding us here in the show have something in that line.
Yeah. So I think 20 years ago, I remember when we were just getting to like market pricing tools that were like in a database online, right? Everybody was like, man, this is going to take away all the jobs because we used to have books to like pull things off of shelves, and we looked up market data in binders.
Oh yeah, paper.
So it was like, even then people were like, oh, this is, now I can just like search and click from a drop down and add a match to a job and build a market composite. And now we've automated those types of things. So I think it's always like some of this is just an evolution, but I do think what's different now is like, I think about ChatGPT, like ChatGPT on my phone, I pay $20 a month, but I get, I don't use Google really anymore. I have conversations with it. I use it to like, do research for me. I use it to write pretty much every memo or thing that I do. I mean, like, it's the draft. I don't, I can't, it's not good enough to completely do things, but I think about what it does for me. Like, I have a relatively small team now. I have a team of 4 people plus myself, but I'm spread out across a lot of other things. So, like, the amount of time that I get to spend on the work, if I can say, draft me a memo that communicates this timeline with da-da-da-da-da, and, think about the audience being this, and I can write that in about 3 sentences. Yeah. And it gives me a, generally grammatically correct, structure of something to start with. It's honestly better than what I was going to do in the next hour of trying to compose that. That just gave me back an hour plus of time. It gave me, thought space and those types of things. I think to Paul's point on all of those things, like especially if you're an individual if you're one person, 2 people on a team, there's going to be weaknesses. Like written communication, not my strong suit. Like telling jokes or doing other things, making weird analogies. Like I can do that all day long.
Comedies.
Yeah, like, we'll do that. But the fact that I can take that, teach it, I can also teach it who I am and have it learn to write in a style that I want it to do. Like those kind of things, that makes me a more powerful individual. Not just like, it doesn't necessarily replace somebody on my team, but it means that my output can go up, 50, 60%.
I was hearing yesterday that economist, I don't remember her name. The first one
the
in the main
opening
stage.
keynote, and now because you asked her name, it totally escaped.
Marcy?
Marcy, yeah.
I don't remember her last name, but Marcy.
Marcy, she told like an optimistic vision that is different if you think about an economist telling something like that. And when you see the AI, most of the people are afraid about this, but she was telling us that the market will be open to a huge consume, like for the, I don't remember, laws, that person that work with law, what is the name?
Lawyer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Hey, you're doing good in another country and another language.
Yeah.
Your English is way better than my Portuguese. So it's
this part of service, and I think about compensation is the same because if I think in Brazil, I think 5% of the companies has strategies and tools and other things to work with this subject, but 95% are not doing something with strategy. They are just going with the labor union telling us the minimum and go ahead. And so this is a problem. I was talking with Sean last year, and could you bring me a number here in America? Maybe, of course, it's not easy to think, but he told me like Emerson, 25%, I think, of the companies. All the rest of the companies are not doing the same like you told me. First, you think that is the number. And second, you think AI is bringing this new way to see compensation, total rewards that is cover all the companies all over the America and all over the globe. I don't know.
I mean, I still say that Microsoft Excel is the #1 market share leader of all of CompTech. Like most companies are still just using spreadsheets. There's tools, but they don't use them. You know, you talk about like only as a 5% in Brazil sort of have that strategy. A lot of Americans will say they have that strategy, but I might be so bold to say most companies still don't have any clue what they are doing with AI. Yeah. Like there is interest, there's fear, I think is that word too, but we'll say, yep, we're thinking about it, but you don't see a lot of it in use.
Yeah.
I think it's just sort of getting there. So I think there's a frontier set of companies, maybe it's the same 5%, that are really actively engaging, but I don't know. I think we're still in that everybody's figuring out how to make it real. We all know it's possible. We all know it's going to be huge, but how do I do it tomorrow? There's a real lack of that. It was one of my big takeaways from the conference yesterday is people are really hungry for more practical, like I can go use this tomorrow kinds of things, right?
Yeah. And let me make sure the question was about. Were we talking about
what is not about AI?
Oh, I didn't ask it.
No.
I answered the question I wanted to answer.
I was thinking like this, and I think Brazil, of course, and all over the globe the number is not so good. But it was not just about AI, but compensation tools and strategies and job architecture. Like they don't have.
Like I'll take a shot at this. So I think in the U.S., about half of the people in the U.S. work for a company with less than 500 employees. About half the people work in companies with more than 500 employees. But if you think about that, a lot of those companies, there's a lot more companies. Like if you talk about number of companies versus like the percent of the population covered, there's millions of companies essentially that exist in that bottom half, whereas there's thousands of companies that exist there. So the vast majority of companies, 500 people, you don't have a compensation person, or if you do, they're wearing 6 hats, or they're doing compensation plus, janitorial work plus mowing the grass plus, whatever else is happening. So I don't, I've not ever worked in a company with less than 4,000 people, right? So that's when I think about that, and I think about the difference between the companies I've worked in with 4,000 or 5,000 people versus 10,000 plus. There's usually a pretty big difference. So I would say, in terms of number of companies, for sure, I think 25% is probably generous as far as sophisticated. Even if I think about it as like just percentage of the population covered, 25% is probably still generous. I think of number of companies, it's probably like your Brazilian 5%. Like there are some big companies that have a lot of sophistication. But I think that's part of where AI, teaching people, sharing gives the chance to kind of bring more of that out, right? Like the fact that you can sort of have those conversations and challenge that, because I do think I'll just pick on ChatGPT because it's the thing that's the most accessible to the most people is I can ask it questions or I can ask it to check work, and it gives me remarkably good, like Paul and I have always joked about the consulting answer is it depends to just about everything. It'll sometimes give the it depends answers, but it'll also kind of give a decision tree or some thoughts. Is it always right? No. But the fact that you can ask it to role play and you can say, pretend you're a compensation professional in this company. What would you do in response to this salesperson's thing? Like I've asked it to role play that, and I'm like, man, this is like better than a lot of comp consultants and analysts and people. Sometimes it like beats me, and I'm just like, oh, I didn't think of that. So, the more that you can think about how to use those tools, I think the more an individual can make themselves more sophisticated.
I agree with you.
Once I had to do a feedback conversation and I wrote to ChatGPT to know how could I approach this person. So I put the situations that I want to talk about, and I asked the chat to say to me how could I say these things without being so directly, or maybe saying things that would be more effective, saying things more effectively as I would say if I was just thinking with my own brain. And it was amazing because I didn't follow the instructions, but I felt secure to talk my way, knowing that there were another ways to say it. So I had a background to feel secure to lead the conversation. So I think that was a good way to use the ChatGPT to lead this conversation and know that I was guiding the feedback in a good way. So I think that's a kickoff, I would say. So you can copy and paste what is there, but you can use as a kickoff for a conversation.
And try another thing. I'm leading for it, and put the profile. You know that soft skills profile, you have Hogan and another one, like you have all the situation, blah, 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 and all this stuff, and then put the Hogan profile. Then
how could I say this thing?
How can I say for this kind of of guy? And it was be careful because the words is so impressive, and they are taking notes for everything because he's an analyst profile. So
I know how you did that feedback with me.
Of course,
it worked.
It works.
Thank you, ChatGPT.
This is so nice because I can imagine in 5 years more, like you do this and you can go like, because I don't know here with the people, but Brazilian is like in the eye, like they like to touch and to talk like this. But here in America, I don't know. But you can write something. Hey guy, how is going? Let me send you a feedback about yesterday, and then you copy all the ChatGPT because of the provider. Send like this. Wow, very structured and all the points. You know, it's something nice. We have a huge tool in our hands. To make our work different. And let me check another thing. You are in Thyssen Group.
Yeah.
And you...
Novo
Insights, my own consulting firm,
It's a consulting firm.
Yeah.
If I can close the door right now, I don't have anyone here. I don't know if you have contracts with companies. Like, what is the best tool that we have to do the compensation management here in America? If I can say one, but I don't know, we have a top 3.
That's gonna make a lot of people.
This is my point because, for example, this company we have in front of you, like they are serving the companies. They are going to Brazil, like to do this because I don't know. Do you have some? It doesn't matter because this podcast is for Brazil. It's not here. It's like you don't have I don't know. And most of them, and we have Brazilians here walking around like looking for companies like this. And when you guys say something like this, it's good like to have a direct.
No, I'm with you. So we smiled because my company just published a report to help people make that choice. So one of the things I observed when I was a practitioner before I started the firm, making that choice
is almost like
really hard, right? Like there's 18 different companies that can help you like run your annual cycle. 18 that participated in our research. There's actually 24, I think, that we sort of know about in the U.S. only. So how do you know what's the right one? So we went out and got demos from all of them, and we rated them. And we just published a report that people can get, and I'll send you a copy because I would love for you to see it. And our key finding is there isn't one that's always the best. It's more about fit. So if you are a smaller organization that cares a lot about your managers having a great, insightful experience, that's a different tool than if you've got 110,000 people in 70 countries.
Yeah, it's different.
Like there's no one that's perfect for everybody. It's more about what do you prioritize? Is it great analytics? Is it really flexible, customized budgeting that matters to you? Is it the statements, right? Like, so when we did it, we rated in those areas, and different tools will rise to the top. So I know it's kind of like a cop-out answer. Like there isn't one that's great. There's a few though that we call out that were like, this is a really insightful, experience. Actually, we had called out Vizier's since I'm staring at the logo, right? Their planner experience was great. They don't want to be a comp spreadsheet. They want to be more of a conversation with the manager about what's a good rate of pay. On the market pricing side, like there's some great innovation happening in salary.com and PayScale and some others, right? Or Great Point HR is a brand new tool in the US for market pricing. Literally been in market for a year with some phenomenal stuff to like help you build pay structures. So it's not like there's one, like I'm throwing out a number to illustrate the point that it's more about fit. Like, what are those features that make sense?
Good.
That you need at your company. Then there's a smaller list. And that was our objective, was to get that you don't need to demo 23 products. Like, here's the 3 that feel like the right for you. Now go and talk to those 3 and make a smart choice.
Yeah.
24. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot. And that's just in cycle management, right? So running your comp cycle. If you want to do survey management and benchmarking, that's a different set. If you do want to do pay equity, that's a different set. Like, we have this landscape image that like shows all these logos, and it's a dizzying array of companies out there.
Wow.
E aí, tá curtindo o conteúdo? Então, rapidinho, eu tenho 2 recados para você. O primeiro é que eu não posso deixar de falar da consulta salarial, que é a patrocinadora oficial de todo esse evento que você está curtindo. Com a consulta salarial, na versão free, você pode olhar para o seu mercado, região, segmento para tomar as melhores decisões salariais. Você acessa os dados da nossa base e pode tomar decisões estratégicas para o seu negócio. E, em segundo lugar, preciso dizer também para você sobre o nosso novo produto de tabelas salariais, que é a forma mais prática e rápida para você atualizar ou criar suas tabelas salariais com a ajuda dos especialistas. Se você quiser saber mais sobre esses 2 produtos, tem o QR Code na tela e tem o link aqui na descrição, tá bom? Aproveita agora então o restante do conteúdo e deixa seu like. Até mais!
Yeah, so maybe if I add on to Paul's point, because he is kind of the expert in the space, and he does have a report, and he's been putting stuff together. But I will say from my own experience, being I think both of us, we can look around and see these booths, and we know the people that founded a lot of these places, are friends of ours, and do all these things. And without even trying to be careful, I can look at a booth over to my left and go, I hired them at one company. I sort of did a great contract with them. I considered a couple other people. When I left, I went to another company, and it was to Paul's point, it's a very different situation. So I was like, what I needed in a global company with 400,000 employees versus what I needed for sort of a U.S. application, and what we had in terms of even the data that we could put into the tool and the data that we needed to supplement. Every vendor that I chose at the one company that I was at was too expensive or not qualified. Would have been overkill. Like, and I went in, so I literally had like a vendor that I hired at one place, and they were like, "We love you, we love you, we love you," and then I had to go in another place and essentially fire them, and then and then I picked a vendor that wouldn't have been qualified, that didn't make the vendor cut at the other place, like couldn't have made it through the purchasing process.
Yeah.
So I think it really depends, and that was, when they were like, wait, we thought you loved us. Why are you breaking up with us? Or, those kind of things. I had to have that conversation of, well, it's not that, we don't love you. It's a matter of like, you have a great tool, and that's where it's, different times, different needs. It's almost like saying, what's the best car in America?
Yeah.
Like, well, it depends. If you have 6 kids, a minivan might be the best car. If you're like a 50-year-old empty nester who's, a divorced man, maybe a Corvette is what you need.
Corvette.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I got your point.
Yeah.
You have a question?
Yeah, but I'm changing the subject.
Okay, go ahead.
So about your presentation team, if you could pick 3 insights of how to elevate compensation team's performance, what would you say? So 3 tips or insights for a Brazilian that need to lead compensation teams, because I think it's almost like a doctor going to a doctor appointment, So if I'm sick and I'm a doctor and I have to go to the hospital and I heard a doctor talking about my health, but I know what he's talking about, so it's something like that.
Yeah. So I want to say, first off, we only promise our audience when we talk to them that they get one
idea. So you're asking for 3.
One idea. You're asking for 3. No. No, but I think Paul had probably the key points. I'll let him hit. Like, maybe we can alternate.
I have to remember it now.
3. I think when you got to the the KPIs and that piece and the team. So if you want to talk about that, then I'll try.
That isn't even what I was going to say, but that's fine. So I think the one is know how to measure your success and don't take it personally. I think that's sort of the point you're saying. So when I was in-house, I used to get like upset when people were unhappy about their pay. Like I thought it was an attack on me. And it took me a while to realize, no, like I'm just a steward of like the business's objectives here, but measure it. Like, and don't like have numbers that you can quantify. Are you making progress? Like that was the big one, right? So how do you know if you need to go to the doctor again if you don't have, something that's keeping track of your health? So like we showed on the slide 7 measures that pretty much every company can measure that help you know, is your comp program healthy? Does it need to change in some way? So I think, is that what you were suggesting was my key point?
But maybe you probably had another one.
What
was your key point?
I was going to go down the, if I think about the impact of technology and AI, focus less on the content of compensation and more on like your ability to problem solve. So if you're hiring for a resource or if you're just getting started in this space, like be tech savvy, be curious, understand how AI works.
Yeah.
That's going to be more important than I know how to build an incentive plan because that could get automated or you can gig that out. You can find a consultant to help you with it. But you always need sort of tech savvy, data ready storytellers, communicators. Like those soft skills or those core skills, I think matter more than like the specific, I've built the job architecture before. Because you can find people to help you with that. You'll have a longer career if you're really just a good technical person that can communicate and partner with somebody.
You make me think about like when if you are a data architect or a data engineer coming to the compensation area is good and it's totally different because they don't know anything about the rules and all this stuff we have, but they don't understand like how to compilate all the data and to understand the back that in front of the chat that we are reading something. So this is different. I was the Microsoft former CEO, famous guy, 60s.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates has a book.
I was thinking
That guy.
that could be
that guy. That's just Bill Gates.
Okay.
He has a book. Is I don't remember the name in English, but it's as a new
Say
book.
in Portuguese.
Código Fonte. It's like he wrote something like to explain the beginning of the Microsoft and all this stuff, and he was telling about the new job positions that that is not suffering because of the AI, and they'll tell all of them. I think it's 15. All of them is. It's not the developers. Developers are suffering because we have AI doing the job better than we have in human. But most of them are correlated with the data, the way how you construct the data, you think about the bases and all this stuff. So you tell me something that I think is good. Last year we had I don't remember if it was in our conversation or in another one, we had a job position on Amazon. It was about like this. It was a job position for compensation, but all the structure about the job position was architecture, data, and all this stuff. It's not a compensation guide. There's no anything about compensation. Yes, there's no anything.
Yeah.
The book is called Source Code: My Beginnings.
Yeah.
Good one.
Source code, my
Source code.
beginnings. Yeah.
It's a new
See what he did there?
Brand
It's like
new.
a software thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was yesterday with us for
Gates.
dinner, so he told about.
Bill Gates was with you for dinner?
Yeah,
he
yeah.
talked to-
The same
He did the
same chair.
Same
yeah.
chair. Yeah.
But it wasn't AI.
I'm ready to fill his chair.
Sure,
right?
you are. Probably could.
Maybe there's some cash left over
I
underneath.
mean, you're at least as nerdy. Yeah. Yeah.
And like we started this conversation with I was thinking about 3 points and challenges, and we started with one that is how to manage the team that sometimes you don't have many people. So can you tell us in topics like, to go to the end of the conversation, trends and future vision? Of course we talk about AI and all this stuff. You think it's so far or it's start to do right now because you don't have any time? And if you know anything about this stuff, maybe your job is at risk.
Trend. So, and I think this is where I think the trend is going to be more about So I think that yes, AI will revolutionize things, but I think AI, I think 75% of the revolution is going to be kind of like what we experience with the internet or Microsoft Excel or these other things, which is not that we suddenly, okay, think about like there's like groundbreaking mega things like like disruptor things like Amazon selling like, so in the United States when I first went to college, it was like if you wanted textbooks, you were paying $300 to buy the professor's textbook that he wrote, and the only way that you're going to get through the class was if you bought this like Monopoly thing. And then Amazon started like selling, so you had like these disruptor companies that came in and like changed the landscape of how something. I think AI is going to be like 25% disruptors,
good.
but I think 75% of it is going to be like people that just use it differently, and it changes like the way that I do, like the way that I use ChatGPT in the day-to-day life. It's not necessarily going to get me a different job, but it might change the way that I do my job. It might change the effectiveness. It might add to the ability for me to tell the story, which, like, if I was going to circle back now to do like the third point from like our session yesterday to take away, just to like bring it all together. This is how you do storytelling, Paul. But is we pull it all in and say, like, how do you communicate with your company, with your executives about what resources do I need? Do I need more technology? Do I need another comp person? You know, how do I justify my return on investment? So we kind of, joked around about like, thinking about this in terms of like like the purchasing department says, hey, we need more people because we got to buy toilet paper cheaper, or we got to buy, whatever it is. Like, well, if we're managing people and we have our KPIs and we're like looking at these metrics, we can show improvement. We can show return on, value. Part of the problem is a lot of comp people think like when like we asked a question of the audience yesterday, and I didn't pick on the audience too bad, because when we said like what's the most expensive thing in your company, and like half the people said it was compensation, the other half didn't, and then I said, well, what else is it? And
they didn't know.
People were like, well, we don't know. But then I said, well, what do you think it is? And then like a bunch of people shouted benefits, and I was like, I've never worked at a company in the United States where benefits was as much or more than compensation, but like even in our own audience we did that. But like I realized like the mindset on that is, it's because benefits spend is going up faster, right? Yeah. So in most companies, benefits might be 30% of what compensation is in the U.S., so that's probably not the same in Brazil. But in the U.S., like because we have employer health insurance and all those things, but what I experience when I'm talking to my finance leaders, because we know most companies aren't doing a zero-based budget, is they think about like, oh, my merit increase is 3%, but my benefits are going up 6%. Or they think about like the increased cost of these things. People in compensation often forget that, like, like the payroll is always a choice. And if you don't believe me, like there's, wait till your company has a RIF or you do something else. So I think there's that, even like how we learn to think about things as a business person, how we tie that all together. So I think, compensation as a subset of HR has to be much more compensation. I'm a part of the business. It's human capital optimization. So when you think about it that way, it's not just about what's the marginal increase of my merit budget versus like my, promotional budget or those types of things, because that's never really the spend, which is one of the KPIs that Paul, kind of shared and talked about, is like, where does your real spend go? So I think, that might have been too down the rabbit trail or the rabbit hole. You probably have a better Brazilian translate. That doesn't translate at all. But we went off on a side quest here.
I got this point, and I agree with you, because our homework to do this conversation was using AI. So we have 25% of the homework, but the rest of the conversation was like this. I was not reading on my cell phone, but I got the point, I understand all this stuff. And it's a kind of a political job to understand all the ways, like to get, for example, to understand the company and all the stakeholders to see what is the best. Because I have all the information here, and I can direct like go here or go there. So, but this part to understand, we have a human being to discuss, like analyzing like the guys, all the investors and all this stuff. Oh, I couldn't do this with the benefits, or I couldn't do this with the compensation, because, and this is the point, like, when you are young, you don't have the great questions, and you don't understand this all the company environment. So this is the point that we can do good connections. You are experts, so it's not a problem. AI tool like this is good for you because you know how to manage this. But when you think a guy, a 22-year-old guy, 23, that is coming to the market, is going to the company, took this tool and use, but how? I don't know how.
Yeah.
What is the question? Metrics, remember? It's not about the metrics, they know all this stuff, but you need to do the right question.
Just
Yeah.
for the
Please look
record,
like the
I'm
movie.
not sharing 25% of my wage with ChatGPT.
Well, and just to dovetail a little bit, I worry slightly about 10 years from now, not 5 years from now. So somebody coming in at 22, they're not going to learn some of the same things that we all learned 20 some years ago. I won't put a number out there because it's going to be automated.
Yeah.
But then how do they prepare themselves for the next step of their career? And maybe I'm just the old guy making this up, where I feel like doing the work prepared me better to talk about and strategize around the work. If the robot's doing it, if AI is doing it, how am I preparing to talk about it, to partner, to think and innovate? Right? So if you think kind of one step beyond, right, the impact will be modest. I don't disagree with you. Like, it's not going to kill the jobs, but it's going to change the jobs. But how do we build the right skills when we become more dependent on technology to do some of the work that helps you build those skills? So it's a paradox. Is that the right word? It's probably not the right word, but it's a difficult thing to figure out. Like, how do I embrace the efficiencies that I can get while still learning what I need to learn to get better at it at the same time?
Yeah. So you just reminded me. So we're going to do a callback. It's a good stand-up comedy thing to last year when we talked about funny things. I think we talked about like Nate Bargatze as a comedian. He has a great joke where he talks about, he's like, I'm not that smart. He's like, if I was a time traveler and I went back 100 years, like, I don't know that I'd be able to do, like, a lot of people would be able to, like, be rich or whatever. He's like, I don't read. I don't, like, pay attention. He's like, so if I went back 100 years and they were like, what's going to be 100 years in the future? He's going to be like, I have cell phones. They're going to be like, how'd they work? And he's like, I have no idea. Like, I just, everything is just like, it just all kind of happens. He's like, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to, they'd be like, can you tell us how to, like, do this? And he's like, I would just be like, well, it's going to be great. Like, good luck. I think we're afraid probably a little bit of that, but and I can't tell how much of that is like we're going to be old men and sitting around going, when we were a kid, we I think about like my parents and grandparents' generation being like, you guys don't know how to do anything anymore. We used to like farm and
That's right.
How much of it is that versus how much of it is that. But I think that's where like the timeless kind of thing. So we'll pick another, we'll do another name drop to a person of, I think Peter Drucker, he did a lot of great management consulting stuff. But one of my favorite quotes from him is, it's not so much about getting the right, I'm paraphrasing it, but he has a famous quote that's about, it's not so much about getting the right answer, but knowing the right question to ask. And I think that's always been true. I mean, he was sharing that like in the 1980s to, MBA students. Yeah. And I think, ChatGPT and all these things help us get to more answers or more possibilities or can aggregate that and get to answers faster. But it's 100% asking the right question. I think about, so I had somebody ask me the question the other day, can we have a local American go work in Brazil? It was we have a large Brazilian group, and I was like, okay, well, there's going to be some compliance concerns about that, and I could think of 4 off the top of my head, as far as like, all right, here's this. But I was like, I also knew that we were in a situation where we had a team that we kind of needed to fully explain it to. So like, it's cool that I could think of 4 reasons off the top of my head. So then I go into ChatGPT and say, thinking about, payroll considerations, tax implications, benefits implications. What are things that I need to be thinking about if we were to have a worker go to work in Brazil? What are the time frames? And it came back with like a 13-itemized list of concerns. It talked about, time limits and how many days somebody can spend before they're taxable on another thing, But it really, like, here's the, if I just said, can an American worker go work in Brazil? It would have been like, sure, right? If I didn't ask the right question, if I didn't give it the right framework, it wasn't going to do that. And that is like the fear that the 22-year-old right out of school, a manager comes to them and says, can we move this person to go do this? And then they say, Yeah, why not? There's planes, there's tickets. You can do that. It sounds good.
Yeah.
So that's
Good.
that's a very real. Again, makes me smarter. I could think of 4 reasons like that, but then when it came up with 9 more, I was like, oh, those are, and some of them, and again, I also had to make the judgment that like 5 of them weren't relevant because of like the, industry concerns that it was bringing up or whatever, but
Yeah.
it was there as like a, that's where like AI is a thought partner, but only if I know what to ask it to do.
Good.
Yeah, I agree.
And the last question: if you could drink a coffee with someone, anyone, all over the globe, but alive, not a death.
Oh,
a dead
alive.
one, yeah. Who would be?
The alive part got me. Like, I've gotten that question before, but it's like ever, and that's an easier question. So alive. You got this.
Alive.
You got to have one.
Oh, I was going to say you, Paul. But,
So let bring us a coffee. So
Yeah.
there we go.
I can make
I
a
really
coffee.
need
Start
coffee
right now.
right
That's
now.
all
is
it
what
needed
comes
was
down to.
coffee?
Yeah.
Like, it's
I
really that
really-
simple?
I'm really struggling this morning is what it comes down to. No, I don't know. You got somebody else besides me, obviously.
This is maybe silly, maybe great though. I have a big love for Mark Cuban.
Who is
So Mark Cuban, he was an American entrepreneur. He's best known now, I would say, for being on Shark Tank.
Oh,
So like the
Used
business
to,
I know
pitch
used to
show.
own a basketball
And he
team.
owned the Dallas Mavericks. And why I admire him is, one, he's a visionary entrepreneur. Like, he thinks about what will be different 10 years from now and makes big bets, and he wins some and he loses some. But he also isn't afraid to like be him. Like, he is an unashamed basketball fan, right? So I like seeing people like that don't lead single threaded lives, is our word. Like, you don't just do one thing. They can kind of do multiple things, because
Good.
I admire that. So there's my answer.
good.
Yeah.
All right. So besides you, Paul, it might be.
I should have named you. I guess I lost some
know, I
like friend
feel
points
like,
there.
I feel like maybe. I don't know. This is one of those things, if you ask me in a different day, but I would say like, George Lucas, as both a businessman and somebody that like inspired most of the artwork and tchotchkes in my house, is, like just the whole, like, I would love to have coffee and have the conversation, because I think we all know, like, he sold the whole Star Wars franchise to Disney, and there's like a whole, there's people that feel different ways about that. But the idea of like taking something that you built, figuring out what to do with it, kind of out of the imagination. Like there's some things there where like you have a passion thing that you own that you're associated with, but then also how do you like hand that off? And, I think there's a lot of like lessons that could be learned out of those types of things. I think there's a lot of things that even like besides being a Star Wars fan, and that's where like, if I went down like the list of top 5, they're probably, I don't know. I think, there's a lot of people like Mark
So,
Hamill I'd love to meet.
Prepare your cup of coffee because they are here.
I was going to say, Mark Cuban, if you're watching, and I know you are, right? Like, I'm ready. I will meet you anyway. No.
Good. Man. Thank you guys so much. And like last year, this is something so nice to do, and to new different people like you guys with the expertise you have. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
See you
you.
in Brazil, okay?
Yeah,
One of these days.
we'll call you.